I was unbuckling Aiden's duffel bag the same way I always did when he came back from a trip, methodically, one zipper at a time, half listening as I asked about what he ate, what games he played, if he won any, if he missed me. But this time was different. He didn't answer. He stood there by the doorway, his little hands tucked into the front pocket of his hoodie, his eyes locked on the floor like it held a secret too heavy to carry alone. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't move to hug me the way he usually did when he got back. The room felt colder with his silence in it. "Aiden?" I asked gently, glancing up from the half-open bag. "You okay, bud?" He didn't nod. He didn't even shrug. He just looked at me then, really looked. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't fear in his eyes. It wasn't sadness. It was numbness. The kind of numb that didn't belong on a child's face. My heart paused, caught between instinct and dread. Then, in a voice that barely pushed air, he whispered something that stopped me cold. "Dad, don't ever go back to that house." The bag slipped from my hand. The thud it made against the floor seemed louder than it should have been. I turned to face him fully, my pulse spiking with confusion. "What do you mean? What happened, Aiden?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the front pocket of his hoodie and pulled out the old phone I'd given him. Just for games, just for fun, no SIM card. It was scratched and clunky, and he rarely used it anymore. But there it was, clutched tightly in his little fingers. He walked over and handed it to me, looking up without a word. No tears, just a look that said, "You need to see this." "Just look," he said quietly. I sat down on the edge of the couch, my hands suddenly clumsy as I unlocked the device. The screen flickered for a moment, then loaded. There was only one video on it, time-stamped for 2 nights ago. I glanced up at him. He nodded. "Play it," he murmured. I pressed play. The footage was grainy, the lens half covered by something dark, maybe his hoodie, maybe a blanket. The audio came through like a punch to the gut. At first, there was nothing, just the sound of kitchen cabinets opening and closing. Then voices. 2 of them. One sharp, familiar. Estelle, my wife's mother. The woman who never liked me, who never trusted me, who smiled through her teeth every time I visited. "He thinks that boy's his," Estelle said, her voice laced with that smug, syrupy tone she used when she thought no one was listening. Just like he thought Selena was faithful all those years. I froze. My grip on the phone tightened. My breath stopped moving. In the background of the video, I heard a fork clatter against a plate, and then Selena's voice. Casual. Effortless. "He'll never know," she said. "He believes what I tell him." Laughter followed. Their laughter. That cruel, knowing kind that lives in the corners of secrets long kept. My world, once solid, cracked along a fault line I hadn't even seen forming. I paused the video. The room felt like it had been turned inside out. The air too heavy to breathe. I looked up at Aiden. He was still standing there, still quiet. Still too still. "How long were you recording?" I asked, my voice barely my own. "I left it on by accident," he said. "I was playing a game, then I heard them talking, and I just stayed still. I didn't mean to record it, but I didn't stop it either." He sat beside me then, small and silent. His hand found mine, and I held it like an anchor in the storm that had just ripped through my chest. "You did the right thing," I told him, though I wasn't sure if I was saying it for him or for myself. My mind spun with possibilities, with denials, with desperate attempts to rationalize. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe they were talking about someone else. Maybe it was taken out of context. But I knew better. Estelle's voice had venom. Selena's had certainty. And neither woman sounded like they were pretending. The phone buzzed gently in my hand as the screen dimmed. I stared at the black reflection of my own face, my stunned eyes, my clenched jaw, my trembling breath. My mind went at every bedtime story, every scraped knee I'd kissed, every proud moment at Aiden's school, every morning I'd made him breakfast while Selena slept in. And now, those moments felt like a dream someone else had lived. But I looked down at Aiden, his eyes watching me for my next move, and I realized something that helped me take the next breath. He was still my son. Biology be damned. I ran my fingers through his hair and pulled him closer to me. He didn't resist. He leaned into my side, small and warm, the same way he had since he was 3. He hadn't changed. What had changed was the ground beneath us, and the woman we both trusted with our lives. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I'm proud of you for being brave." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. He just squeezed my hand tighter. I sat there for a long time with him like that, The phone dimming again in my palm, the whisper still echoing in my head. The moment that split my life into before and after. Don't ever go back to that house. And I wouldn't. Not without answers. Not without the truth. Not without knowing what else they'd hidden behind smiles and casseroles and weekend drop-offs. My world hadn't just cracked, it had shifted entirely. But now that I'd heard the whisper, there was no unhearing it. Now that I'd seen the look in my son's eyes, there was no going back. Now, I had to find out everything. And I would. I replayed the video twice before I let the sound settle. Once wasn't enough. The first time, my brain tried to protect me, tried to convince me I'd misheard, misunderstood, misinterpreted. But the second time left no room for doubt. It was them, Selena and her mother. The voices I'd heard for years through birthday dinners and holiday laughter, suddenly hollow and venomous and real. They weren't talking about someone else. They were talking about me, about Aiden, and about a lie so deep it had its own roots. The kitchen in the video was unmistakable. That ugly wallpaper with sunflowers peeling at the corners. The ceramic rooster by the stove. Estelle's house. I'd been there countless times, sat at that table, shared coffee with those women, and now I could barely stand to watch the scene unfold. Estelle's voice led the charge, sharper than I'd ever heard it in person. He thinks that boys is, she said, snickering like a villain from a cheap soap opera. Just like he thought Selena was faithful all those years. She didn't even pause to make it sound less cruel. Then came Selena's response. My wife. My partner of 11 years. The woman who used to rest her head on my chest and whisper that I was her anchor. Her voice came through clear, calm, and deliberate. He'll never know. He believes what I tell him. That laughter. God. That laughter chewed through everything. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't guilty. It was triumphant. Like the kind of laugh someone releases when they realize they've been getting away with it for too long. I didn't even notice I had started standing up. My body moved before I could tell it not to. The phone dropped onto the couch cushion, the screen still lit up, and I found myself pacing the living room like I was trapped in a cage I hadn't known I was in. I ran my hands over my face, then into my hair, trying to shake the sound of it. But I couldn't. The tone, the smugness, the sheer lack of remorse in their voices. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the confidence. They truly believed I'd never know. That I'd just keep on being the doting father, the reliable husband, the man they could manipulate in plain sight. And for a while, I had been. I thought about every late night Selena claimed she was working. Every quiet tension I brushed off as stress. Every time Estelle looked at me like I was some dumb puppy too loyal to know when he'd been kicked. All of it. The pieces weren't just scattered anymore. They were forming a picture I never asked to see. I sat down again, forcing myself to stay still. Aiden was upstairs, probably trying to distract himself with the cartoons I turned on to buy myself a moment. He didn't know I'd watched the whole thing. He didn't know I now carried a weight I wasn't sure how to set down. I picked up the phone and watched the timestamp again. 2 nights ago, while I was texting Selena goodnight, and she was replying with sweet dreams, she had already said those words. Already laughed at my expense. I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat and leaned back against the cushion, my mind swirling. Was Aiden mine? No. That question didn't come like a whisper. It punched its way through my chest. It wasn't something I'd ever thought to ask before. He had my smile, I thought. He had my sense of humor, didn't he? He loved baseball the way I did. He liked his pancakes with way too much syrup, just like I did when I was 8. But now I didn't know if I'd seen what I wanted to see, if I'd imagined the connections because love fills in the blanks. And still, love didn't just vanish. I thought of him learning to walk, wobbling on padded feet toward me with a giggle that erased every bad day I'd ever had. I thought of the first time he fell off his bike and cried into my shirt, whispering, "Don't let mommy see me cry." He was mine. Every memory said so. Every instinct. But biology doesn't care about instincts. And this video? It shoved biology into the spotlight. My throat tightened as I pulled up my contacts. There was one man I trusted with this, Dr. Isaiah Poe, a family doctor I'd known since college. I typed quickly, asked if he could help me arrange a discreet DNA test. No questions asked. He replied within minutes, "I've got you. Come in tomorrow morning." I closed the message and sat there in silence. The room didn't feel like my home anymore. Every picture on the wall, family portraits, wedding shots, Aiden's baby photo felt like a photograph of a life I wasn't sure belonged to me. My hands were still shaking, but not from rage. Not yet. From clarity. From the kind of awakening that doesn't let you go back to sleep. Selena would come home in an hour. She'd smile, kiss my cheek, ask what we wanted for dinner. And I would smile back. I'd nod. I'd act like I hadn't heard anything. Because now, I couldn't just react. I had to know. Had to make sure. Had to move carefully. Not for her sake, but for Aiden's. He deserved more than a father who lost control. When I finally stood again, I moved like someone else was pulling my strings. I went to the kitchen, took out his favorite pasta, started boiling water. I needed normalcy, just enough of it to get through the evening. When Aiden came downstairs, I gave him a smile I hoped didn't look fake. He sat at the table, his eyes searching mine. I saw the question in them. Did you see it? Do you believe me? I saw it, I said softly. Thank you for showing me. He nodded, biting his lip. Are you mad? Not at you, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. Never at you. And I meant it. That night, after dinner, I tucked him in like always, kissed his forehead, turned on the night light shaped like a moon. And when I closed his door, I stood in the hallway, staring at nothing. I was going to find out the truth. All of it. No matter what it shattered. Because I couldn't afford to stay in the dark another second longer. The video had shown me more than lies. It had shown me how blind love can be. But not anymore. I didn't say a word to her that night. Not about the video. Not about the voices. Not about the storm building inside me that hadn't yet broken the surface. When Selena walked through the door, tote bag slung over her shoulder and hair swept into that effortless bun she always wore after her yoga class, she looked at me and smiled. That same smile I used to trust. The same smile I once thought meant home. Hey, she said casually, setting her keys down in the bowl by the door. Dinner smells great. I nodded and handed her a plate. No kiss. No comment. Just an offer of food in silence. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to ask. That had become her specialty lately, ignoring the things that didn't fit the narrative she built. I watched her across the table that night, watched the way she twirled her fork in her pasta, the way she glanced at her phone between bites like she was checking for a signal from another life. I said nothing. Not because I didn't have 1,000 questions clawing at my throat, but because I wasn't going to ask. Not yet. Aiden ate quietly too, occasionally looking between us like he was reading the tension without fully understanding its weight. I gave him a smile every time he looked at me. A real one. Just for him. He didn't smile back, not fully, but I could see something in him relax. Like maybe he wasn't alone in the knowing anymore. That night, after we cleaned up dinner and Selena disappeared into the bathroom for her nightly skincare routine, I stepped into the laundry room with a cotton swab and a Ziploc bag. I found Aiden's toothbrush in its usual spot, blue handle, Spider-Man sticker peeling at the side. I handled it gently, brushing the swab against it with steady, careful movements like I was performing surgery on something sacred. When I was done, I sealed it, labeled it with a date, and placed it in the envelope I'd picked up earlier from the pharmacy. I already had mine ready. I'd swabbed the inside of my own cheek earlier that afternoon and packed it the same way. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I didn't even allow myself to feel the betrayal yet. That would come later. For now, I had to stay methodical, focused, because the truth needed to be absolute, indisputable. When someone has spent years lying to you, you stop accepting words. You start needing proof. I scheduled a courier pickup from the lab that same night. They'd send someone the next morning, no questions asked. I chose the expedited option. I needed the results fast. Not because I was desperate to punish Selena. I just needed the weight off my chest. The not knowing was killing me minute by minute. The next few days crawled. I moved through them with a silence so loud it should have set off alarms. But Selena didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she was too busy playing her part. She still kissed Aiden goodnight, still scrolled through Instagram before bed, still asked me if I wanted anything from the store when she left. But her questions were hollow, her affection mechanical, like she was checking boxes on a role she no longer believed in. I watched her closely, studied her in the same way I'd study legal contracts at work, looking for what wasn't said, what was being hidden between the lines. Her smiles didn't reach her eyes anymore. Her touch lingered too long, like she was trying to keep up appearances. But it was her timing that gave her away. Every time she stepped into another room to check her phone, every time she walked back in just a little too quickly if I moved toward her, the guilt was there. or at least the fear of being caught. And maybe that was what stung the most. Not just the betrayal, but how little effort she made to cover it. As if I wasn't worth the truth. As if I was too dull to catch on. But I did. I had. And I was done pretending. One evening, I found myself watching Aiden as he colored in a notebook on the living room floor. He hummed to himself softly, focused on staying inside the lines. His tongue stuck out slightly when he concentrated. Just like I used to do when I was his age. I sat down beside him and picked up a red crayon. He looked up at me and smiled. A real one this time. Did you finish the video game at Grandma's? I asked. No, he said, still coloring. Didn't feel like playing. Why not? He shrugged. I still on the page. Didn't feel fun. I nodded and let the silence stretch. He didn't need me to dig. He didn't need questions. He just needed presence. And I could give him that. No matter what the test said. Later that night, when Selena went to bed early, complaining of a headache, I stayed in the kitchen and stared at the envelope on the counter. The courier had come and gone. The swabs were on their way to the lab. All that was left to do was wait. I leaned against the fridge and tried to remember the exact moment when I stopped trusting her. Maybe it was when she told me not to worry about Aiden's school forms because she had it covered. Or maybe it was the night she fell asleep on the couch with her phone clutched too tightly in her hand. Or maybe it was earlier than that, back when her mother's comments about our relationship started to sound more like rehearsed digs than unintentional slips. I didn't know. But I knew this. Something had been off for a long time. And I'd been too busy keeping our family functioning to admit it. That was my failure. I gave the benefit of the doubt so often, it became a habit. But not anymore. I wasn't going to look away from the cracks. I was going to shine a light straight through them and see exactly what had been hiding behind the wallpaper. Before I went to bed, I walked into Aiden's room one more time. He was asleep, arm curled around his favorite stuffed bear. His breathing was soft, steady. I sat on the edge of his bed and watched him for a while, just letting the moment hold me. Whatever happens, I whispered, I've got you. And I meant it with everything in me. The next morning, Selena stood in front of the mirror, humming to herself as steam curled around the bathroom like mist around a cliff. I waited until I heard the water turn on again. She always liked extra heat, said it helped her think. The shower fan kicked in, muffling everything else in the house, including the sound of my own heartbeat as I reached for her phone. I'd seen her passcode enough times, 7283. Aiden's supposed birthday. It used to make me smile. Now it felt like a joke that wasn't funny anymore. The screen opened easily. No fingerprint needed. She trusted me that much, or maybe she was just careless. Either way, I wasn't wasting the opportunity. I slid onto the bed and began working quickly. I'd downloaded a secure cloning app the night before. Set up the permissions. All I had to do was connect our devices and wait for it to transfer. The bar began to fill. Slowly, then faster, as pictures, messages, files, and even deleted folders flooded into my backup phone. It took 5 minutes. Longest 5 minutes of my life. I moved in silence, careful not to make a sound. My ears were trained on the water, timing each movement like a conductor anticipating the final note. When the bar hit 100%, I disconnected the clone, wiped the screen of any trace, and placed the phone right back where I found it, on top of the folded towel by the sink. She didn't notice a thing. Just stepped out moments later in her robe, cheeks flushed from the heat. Could you hand me my phone? She asked, rubbing at the fogged mirror. I did. Smiled even. Here you go. She kissed my cheek. A routine so well practiced it barely meant anything anymore. And just like that, she walked away, towel drying her hair, completely unaware that her secrets were no longer just hers. Later, I sat in the garage with my phone and headphones, away from everything, locked in. I started scrolling through her messages, starting with the ones between her and Estelle. They were exactly what I expected and worse than I imagined. He's acting weird lately, she wrote just 3 days ago. Be careful. He might be onto something. Estelle responded, as if they were plotting a heist instead of burying a man's reality. Then this one. Don't say anything unless you have to. He's too slow to catch on. I stared at that line for a long time. Too slow. That's what they thought of me. That's how little respect I'd earned after years of loyalty and sacrifice. After birthdays I organized and anniversaries I paid for. After parenting Aiden through fevers and nightmares while Selena went to clear her head. But it wasn't just the words, it was the tone behind them. That smug certainty that I would never look closely. That I would always be too trusting, too preoccupied, too soft. Then came another message, one that turned my blood cold. Aiden might have heard us, Selena wrote. Estelle replied, you think he recorded it? That was it. The admission. They knew what they'd said. They knew it was wrong. They weren't sorry. They were just afraid they'd been caught. And they had been. By a boy with a game phone and more courage than the both of them combined. I saved every message, every screenshot. I uploaded them to a private folder with a backup on a secure drive. I didn't know yet how I would use them, but I knew I would. This wasn't going to be one of those betrayals that rotted in silence. Not this time. Her phone also held photos. Old ones. Ones she'd saved and deleted. A few that made my stomach twist. A picture of Aiden as a toddler sitting on the lap of a man I'd never seen before. No tags, no explanation. Just a date that predated his second birthday. The resemblance? Subtle, but there. Enough to plant another crack in the foundation I'd been trying to stand on. There were emails, too. Legal threads forwarded between Selena and her mother. Conversations about property rights. About financial accounts. One thread titled, Just in Case. I opened it. Inside were attachments. Copies of life insurance policies, deeds to the house, statements about our joint accounts. You should take your name off the joint, Estelle wrote. He'll notice, Selena responded. Then do it little by little. I dropped the phone and leaned back in the chair. My heart wasn't just broken. It was insulted. I wasn't married to a woman. I was embedded in a campaign. A slow, strategic operation to siphon, suppress, and outmaneuver. And I had helped it thrive with my own blind devotion. I stared at the ceiling of the garage for a long while, the smell of old tools and oil clinging to the air like the ghosts of every chore I'd done for that family. Fixing their gutters, hanging their shelves, lending Estelle my truck when hers wouldn't start. All of it now felt like favors I had paid for with pieces of myself. I wanted to throw something, scream, but I didn't. I couldn't. That wasn't who I was, not anymore. Rage was a luxury, and I was on a mission now. I closed the phone, took a breath, and walked back inside. Selena was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter like she actually gave a damn about appearances. She looked up and smiled. Want coffee? I nodded. Sure. She handed me a mug, her fingers brushing mine like it meant something. I sipped and watched her. Watched the woman I once knew stand in the kitchen of a life she helped build with lies. She thought she was still ahead, still safe behind her mask, but I had seen behind it. I walked upstairs and checked on Aiden. He was lying on the bed, reading one of his comic books. When he saw me, he sat up, eyes searching mine. Did you find anything? I knelt beside his bed. Yeah, buddy, I said softly. I found a lot. His eyes welled a little, but he didn't cry. What are we going to do? I squeezed his hand. We're going to make it right. Together. Because that's what fathers do. Real ones. I sat in the car outside the pharmacy like a man waiting to be sentenced. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. It sat in my lap, crisp and white, with my name typed in clean, sterile letters on the front. It came from the lab that morning, marked confidential like that would soften whatever truth was sealed inside. It didn't. Nothing could. The air conditioner hummed faintly. The heat outside shimmered against the windshield, but I barely noticed. I hadn't even turned off the engine. I just sat there, staring at it, feeling my fingers go numb around the edges. I thought about not opening it. I thought about driving home and pretending I'd never seen it, burying it under receipts in the glove compartment or shoving it in a drawer next to old insurance papers. But pretending was a luxury I no longer had. Not after the video. Not after the messages. Not after the way Aiden had looked at me with a child's hope wrapped in quiet fear. So I opened it. The seal gave way with a soft rip that sounded too loud inside the car. My hands were steady, surprisingly steady, considering how fast my heart was pounding. I pulled out the single sheet of paper, unfolded it slowly, and read the words printed across the top. Paternity Analysis Report. I scanned past the names, past the barcodes and the identifiers, until my eyes landed on the sentence that would cut through everything I thought I knew. Probability of paternity, 0%. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I read it again. Then a third time. The numbers didn't change. The ink didn't fade. The truth was fixed. Final. Unyielding. In the eyes of science, of blood, of biology, I wasn't Aiden's father. But I didn't feel my heart break. I felt it lock up, like a door slamming shut on something sacred. I sat there in that car with the paper trembling slightly in my grip, and all I could think about was the first time I held him. He was barely 7 pounds. Wrinkled. Squalling. Beautiful. I remembered how his fingers curled around mine and how Selena smiled at me like we'd just created the world. Except we hadn't. She had already known then. And still, she let me carry the weight of belief, year after year. She let me rock him through fevers, patch scraped knees, read bedtime stories, build Lego castles, and plan every damn birthday like it mattered to her as much as it did to me. But she knew, and she said nothing. I folded the paper slowly, smoothing the creases with the edge of my thumb, then slid it back into the envelope. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurting, but because the tears would have given her too much. I wasn't going to give Selena one more piece of myself. Not now. Not ever again. I looked out the windshield. A couple walked past with a toddler between them. He swung their arms with all the trust in the world. I used to be that kind of father, the one who never questioned whether he belonged. Now I was a man sitting in a car with a truth too sharp to carry and too dangerous to drop. But here's the thing they didn't count on: truth doesn't change what's real. Aiden was still my son. He still called for me in the middle of the night. He still ran into my arms after a scraped knee. He still trusted me with his secrets, with his fears, with that recording he hid in his pocket. That doesn't come from biology. That comes from love, from presence, from choice. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I didn't know exactly what I would do next, but I knew one thing for certain: I wouldn't be shouting. I wouldn't be slamming doors or throwing accusations. I wouldn't give her the drama she probably expected. That was the thing about people who lie: they assume discovery always comes with chaos. But not mine. My revenge would be quiet, measured, surgical. By the time I got home, Selena was outside watering the hydrangeas like she hadn't detonated my entire identity. She waved at me with the same hand she used to sign birthday cards that said, "To the best dad." I waved back. The envelope was tucked into my jacket, close to my heart, but not breaking it. Inside the house, Aiden was curled up on the couch reading. He looked up when I entered, and something passed between us. An invisible thread of understanding. He didn't ask, and I didn't say. Instead, I walked over, sat beside him, and put my arm around his shoulders. "Want to watch a movie?" I asked. He nodded, resting his head against me. "Yeah, something funny. Funny it is." We watched something with talking animals and ridiculous plot twists, and I laughed when he laughed. Real laughter. For him. Because in that moment, none of the lies mattered. What mattered was the boy beside me. The boy I chose. After he went to bed that night, I sat at the kitchen table alone, staring at the folded paper. I thought about the word father and what it really meant. Anyone can donate DNA, but it takes something far greater to show up, to stay, to protect, to love without conditions. I wasn't going to tell Aiden yet. Maybe not for a long time. He didn't need that weight. Not when he was already carrying the sting of overhearing something no child should ever hear. My job was to shield him now. From her. From Estelle. From a truth that wasn't his fault. Selena came into the room sometime after 11, drying her hair with a towel, her eyes bleary from sleep, or maybe guilt. She glanced at me, then at the envelope on the table. "What's that?" she asked. I looked up, calm. Something that changes everything. Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" I tapped the envelope once, softly. "I know." Her face didn't twist in guilt. It twisted in fear. And that's how I knew the real war was just beginning. But I wasn't afraid of it. Because I had the truth now. And I wasn't letting go. Sunday came with the same performance it always did: sunlight, casseroles, and a table set like we were still a family built on truth. Estelle's house looked like nothing had changed. The hydrangeas were trimmed. The driveway spotless. The welcome mat clean enough to eat off. And yet, the moment I stepped through that door with Aiden's hand in mine and a store-bought dessert in the other, it felt like I was walking into a theater. Everyone was already in costume. The play was already in progress. I was just here to deliver the twist. Selena was in the kitchen, chatting with Estelle over a steaming pot of something she probably didn't cook herself. Riley, Selena's brother, sat on the living room couch scrolling through his phone like the world owed him answers. They all looked up when I walked in. I gave them nothing but a nod and a half-smile. The kind that said, "We'll see." "Hey, babe," Selena said, walking toward me with arms open for a kiss. I offered my cheek. Let it land like a formality. She barely hesitated before pulling back and taking the dessert. You didn't have to bring anything. I wanted to, I replied, my voice even, pleasant. It felt like the right day to bring something sweet. Estelle walked over next, lips pursed like she'd spent the morning sucking on lemons. Glad you could make it, she said with that brittle warmth she reserved just for me. Wouldn't miss it, I replied. Dinner was ready in 20 minutes. Everyone gathered around the table like it was just another Sunday in paradise. Aiden sat next to me, quiet but calm. I kept my hand on his back. A reminder. I'm here. I've got you. Selena served the food, chatting about some stories she'd read online. Estelle chimed in about her neighbor's divorce. Riley laughed at something on his phone. The room smelled like roasted chicken and betrayal. I waited. I let them fill their plates, pass the serving spoons, pour glasses of wine. I let them get comfortable in the roles they'd mastered for years. Liars disguised as family. Actors dressed in smiles. Then I reached into my coat and pulled out the folded envelope. I placed it in the center of the table like it was the final card in a game they didn't realize they'd been losing. Selena glanced at it. What's that? I looked at her. My voice was calm. Why don't you open it and find out? She hesitated, eyes flicking to Estelle. Estelle, always the one with something to say, reached for it first. Her fingers brushed the paper like it might burn her, but she unfolded it anyway. The moment her eyes landed on the words, the color drained from her face. Selena took it next, her hands slightly trembling now. I watched her lips move as she read it. No one else at the table was talking. Not anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my fist. I just looked directly at her and said what needed to be said. He knows, I told her, my tone measured, deliberate. And he's the one who recorded you. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind that punches the oxygen out of a room. Estelle dropped her fork. The clang echoed like a gunshot. Selena looked at me, mouth parted, words caught somewhere between denial and confession. I can explain. Don't. I cut in gently. You had your chance. Riley finally spoke, glancing around like he'd just realized he was sitting on a landmine. Look, man, let's not make a scene here. I turned my gaze on him. Cold. Direct. You knew too? He opened his mouth. Closed it again. Right? I said, nodding slowly. So the lying wasn't just between mother and daughter. It was a family project. Estelle's voice, sharp now, angry, desperate. You had no right going through her phone. That's an invasion of privacy. I leaned back, folding my arms. And what would you call building a lie around a child? What would you call letting me raise him, love him, without ever knowing the truth? She looked like she might cry. Good. Let her cry. Selena reached for my hand. I moved it away. You don't understand, she said softly. It was complicated. No, I replied. It was simple. You looked me in the eye, year after year, and let me believe something that wasn't true. You let him believe something that wasn't true. Selena's eyes welled with tears. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. But it did, I said. And now we're here. Aiden shifted in his seat beside me. I placed a hand gently on his shoulder. We're going, I said. Dinner's over. Selena stood abruptly. Wait, please, don't do this in front of him. Funny, I said, standing too. I thought about that. I thought about shielding him. But he's already heard more truth than you ever gave him. He deserves to see what honesty looks like. Estelle moved like she was about to block the doorway. I gave her a look that stopped her cold. We'll talk about this, Selena called after me, her voice cracking. Please. I didn't answer. I just took Aiden's hand, and together, we walked out. He didn't ask where we were going. He didn't cry. He didn't look back. Neither did I. We got in the car, and for a while, I just sat there with the engine running, staring straight ahead. Aiden looked at me, his voice quiet. Was that the paper? Yeah, I said. That was it. Does that mean I'm not really your son? I turned to him, took his hand. No, it means I'm not your father by blood. But you've been my son every day of your life. That doesn't change. He nodded, eyes glossy but steady. Can we still go home? He asked. Yes, I said. Our home. The one where people tell the truth. He smiled, just a little. And I felt something new inside me, something clean. The first breath of a life no longer built on a lie. Selena's face crumpled, not from guilt, but panic. That split second of silence after I stood, after I dropped the truth on the table, it stretched out like elastic, tight and threatening to snap. Estelle rose from her seat so fast her chair screeched against the floor, her wine glass tipping but not falling. Her voice rang out first, full of rage, not remorse. "You had no right," she began, finger pointed like a weapon. But I didn't let her finish. I turned toward her slowly, calmly, with the kind of steadiness that comes after a storm's eye opens. "No, you had no right. I raised that boy with everything I had. You turned him into a lie. You let me become a father in a story you were writing behind my back." Her mouth opened, but the words faltered. I didn't care. I wasn't doing this for her. I wasn't here to argue. I was here to burn the mask she'd worn for over a decade, and that required no conversation, just exposure. Selena's voice cracked. "Can we just talk? Not like this. Not with everyone. Everyone's exactly who needs to be here," I said, leveling my eyes at her. "This didn't happen in private. It happened in whispers and dinner tables and behind my back. So no, we're not hiding this now." She looked over at Riley, who hadn't moved, but whose face had turned a shade paler. His fork was still in his hand, hovering halfway to his mouth, frozen like a glitch in a broken simulation. "Riley," I said, "how long have you known?" He tried to scoff. "Man, come on, answer me." His jaw flexed, then relaxed. "A while," he muttered. "I figured it wasn't my place." "Not your place," I echoed, stunned more by his arrogance than his cowardice. "You let me raise him, take care of him, pay for everything, love him, and you never thought maybe I deserve the truth?" He shrugged, half-hearted. "I figured if you were happy, what's the harm?" "The harm," I said through clenched teeth, "is standing at the edge of a decade of lies. The harm is watching my son try to process a secret that should have never been his burden. The harm is right in front of you. Look at him." I pointed to Aiden, who sat at the far end of the table, his fork untouched, his eyes wide but calm. He wasn't crying. He wasn't speaking. He was just listening. And that, more than anything, gutted me. He'd spent too much of his childhood already learning how to be still, how to keep secrets he didn't understand. Estelle moved to speak again, but I cut her off with a look. "Don't. You've said enough in private. I've heard the recordings. I've read the messages. You weren't just an accessory. You were the architect." Her lip twitched. "You think you're the only one who's sacrificed for that boy?" "No," I said, "but I'm the only one who did it honestly." Selena stepped forward, voice trembling now. "I was scared, okay? I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't think it would matter. You were so good with him, so in love with being a dad. I thought maybe it didn't matter anymore." I laughed, not from humor, from disbelief. "So you decided for me. You let me live a life you edited. You stole my right to the truth and then told yourself it was for my own good." She swallowed hard. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And you know it." There was a pause then, a breathless gap where the room seemed to bend under the weight of everything unsaid. I turned toward Aiden and held out my hand. "Let's go, son." He didn't hesitate. He stood, took my hand, and walked with me toward the door. I could feel their eyes boring into our backs, feel the panic radiating from Selena's body like heat off an engine. She called after us, voice breaking. "Please, don't do this. Don't take him." I stopped at the threshold, turned just enough for her to see my face, for her to hear the quiet clarity in my voice. "He was never yours to keep from me. And you lost the right to ask anything the second you decided I wasn't worth the truth." She took a shaky step forward. "We can fix this." "No," I said. "You can't fix what you refused to admit until it was too late." I walked out with Aiden, down the porch steps, past Estelle's manicured roses and Riley's rusting sports car. The sun had dipped low in the sky, throwing gold over everything like it was trying to make the moment look softer. But I didn't feel soft. I felt clear. I felt finished. In the car, I didn't say much. Aiden sat beside me, legs swinging, his eyes forward. After a long stretch of silence, he asked, "Are you mad at me?" My heart cracked again, clean and deep. "No," I said quickly, looking over at him. "Why would you think that?" "Because I heard them. I showed you. And now everything's different." I parked the car, turned to him fully. "Hey, look at me." He did. "You were brave. You did the right thing. You didn't break this, okay? You helped me see it. That took courage." He nodded slowly, and I saw the weight shift off his shoulders, just enough for him to breathe again. When we walked into the house, I locked the door behind us. Not just for safety, for finality. The locks clicked like punctuation marks on a chapter that would never be reopened. I tucked him in that night with more intention than ever before. Sat by his bed and ran my hand through his hair, until his breathing softened and his eyes fluttered closed. He trusted me. That hadn't changed. That never would. Downstairs, I poured a glass of water and stood by the window. The house was quiet. No ringing phones. No forced smiles. No weight of performance. Just truth. And it was bitter, but it was clean. They thought they could lie forever. They thought I'd never look. They thought I'd never leave. They thought wrong. I sat in the living room with Selena's phone in my hand. Not stolen. Not taken in secret. She had left it on the counter like she always did, probably too rattled by the dinner explosion to care about routines anymore. The same phone she used to lie through. The same phone that told Estelle I was too slow to catch on. The same phone that delivered betrayal in text threads, call logs, and mocking emojis. I didn't smile as I opened it. I wasn't angry in the way I expected to be. I was steady, detached, like I was flipping through a dead man's wallet, not out of curiosity, but closure. I had already copied the messages and exported the photos. The evidence was secure. This time wasn't about gathering more. It was about delivery. I scrolled to the file folder where I had saved Aiden's recording. The same one he captured without meaning to. The same one that shifted the earth beneath our feet. I renamed the file, The Last Lie, and dragged it to her home screen. Then I hit record and added something new. A voice note. Just a few seconds. Just enough. I heard them, Dad. I knew something was wrong. His voice. Small. Clear. Brave. I saved it next to the video. Labeled that one truth from Aiden. Let her hear it every time she picks up the phone. Let it be the first thing she sees when she tries to resume life like nothing cracked. Because the performance was over. The final message had been delivered. I locked the phone, placed it gently back where she left it, and stepped away like it was a finished crime scene. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to yell. All I needed was her silence in return for the one she stole from me. She spent years crafting this narrative where I was nothing more than the man she could keep in the dark while she called me husband. I would let the evidence speak now. Let the messages, the recording, and the voice of a child ring in her ears louder than any confrontation ever could. I went to my room and started packing. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I folded shirts the way I always did, left to right, tight creases. I placed important documents in the leather folio I hadn't touched in years. The birth certificate, school records, our marriage license. Not out of sentimentality, out of strategy. Proof matters, even when it hurts. The sound of the front door creaking open downstairs was faint, but I heard it. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I zipped the suitcase and closed the closet. By the time Selena stepped into the bedroom, I was already tying the drawstring on Aiden's overnight bag. She froze. What are you doing? Packing. For what? For freedom, I said simply. For peace. For something real. She crossed the room quickly, panic climbing into her voice. Wait, hold on. Let's talk, okay? Don't do anything dramatic. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because she still didn't understand. This isn't dramatic, Selena. Dramatic was choosing silence over truth. Dramatic was letting me build a life around a lie and smiling every time I said how lucky I was. This is just clarity. Her eyes darted toward the bed. That envelope confirmed everything. But he's your son in every way that matters. Exactly, I cut in, which is why I'm leaving. With him. Her breath caught. You can't just take him. I walked past her and opened the top drawer of my desk. Actually, I can. And I will. I spoke to Noelle, my sister. She's already filed the divorce papers. The petition cites fraudulent paternity, emotional harm, and custodial rights based on best interest of the child. Selena staggered back like I'd slapped her. You filed already? First thing this morning. That's not fair, she said, voice trembling. I should get to explain. I turned to face her fully. No. You had 11 years to explain. And you chose silence. You chose deception. You chose convenience. Her lip quivered. But what about Aiden? I narrowed my eyes. You don't get to ask that anymore. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the space. I grabbed the final document, a printed list of our shared assets, marked and copied for Noelle to handle with her team, and placed it in the folder. I'm not here to argue, I said, my tone low but firm. I'm not here to scream or ask why. I'm here to remove myself from the theater you built. I'm done playing the fool. Her shoulders collapsed inward. I never meant to hurt you. I stared at her for a long moment. But you did. She wiped her eyes. What do I tell people? Whatever you want, I said. But the truth will be waiting if they ask. I turned, zipped the suitcase closed, and wheeled it to the hallway. Aiden stood at his door, already dressed, his backpack on. You okay? I asked him. He nodded slowly. You? I am now. He reached for my hand. We walked past Selena without another word. She didn't try to stop us. At the front door, I paused and handed her the phone. Everything's unlocked. Play the video. Hear his voice. Let it echo. She stared down at it, shaking. I opened the door. You'll be hearing from Noelle. Then we left. Outside, the air smelled like cut grass and coming rain. I loaded our bags into the car. Aiden climbed into the passenger seat and buckled in. When I got in and closed the door, he looked at me. Where are we going? To Aunt Noelle's for now. We'll figure the rest out together. He smiled. I'm glad it's you, Dad. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. It'll always be me. We pulled away from the curb, and I didn't look back. I didn't need to. My past was behind that door. But my future? He was sitting right beside me. 3 days after we left, the call started. Not from Selena, surprisingly. She must have known better, or maybe Noelle's name on the divorce petition was enough to keep her silent. But her friends? Her support circle? They came out in waves, text messages disguised as concern, voicemails full of half-hearted confusion. Hey, I heard what happened. Can we talk? I'm sure there's another side to this. She's been through a lot. Maybe give her a chance to explain. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I was trying to be cold, but because there was nothing left to say to anyone who had seen the cracks forming and chose to decorate around them instead of speak up. They knew what she was. They just didn't care until the illusion shattered. Then Estelle came. She showed up at my office like a storm dressed in beige cashmere. I'd just come back from a site walkthrough, boots still dusted with gravel, tie slung loose around my neck. My receptionist knocked gently, cracked the door open, and said, Mr. Rourke, there's someone here to see you. I didn't even need to ask who. Estelle entered like she owned the place, shoulders square, lips pursed. But her eyes were glassy, mascara already bleeding into the corners. Jonas, she started, voice wavering. Please. I didn't offer her a seat. I didn't move from behind my desk. You have 2 minutes. She looked taken aback by the coldness in my tone. Good. Let it cut. I didn't come here to argue. I came to say I'm sorry. I stared at her for a long moment. No, you didn't. You came here because you thought showing up in person might fix what your silence broke. You were trying to protect your daughter's lie. Let's not pretend this was ever about Aiden. Her voice cracked. But I love that boy. You love control, I snapped. You love keeping people in your orbit so you can feel useful. You didn't just condone her lying, you encouraged it. She stepped forward, hands clasped. I know I made mistakes, but please don't punish Selena by taking Aiden away. I'm not punishing her, I said, standing slowly. I'm protecting him. Her tears came then. Real ones, I think. But they didn't move me, because nothing in her came from guilt. It all came from loss. Loss of influence. Loss of access. Loss of her favorite narrative. I walked to the door and opened it. You're not welcome in his life anymore. I won't say that again. Jonas, goodbye, Estelle. She left in silence. When the door clicked shut behind her, I sat back down and exhaled. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like cleaning up after a flood, slow, heavy, necessary. Aiden and I had settled into Noelle's guest house, a modest little space out back behind her main home. 2 bedrooms, a kitchenette, enough quiet to feel safe. Noelle was everything I needed her to be, supportive, sharp, and steady. She didn't ask invasive questions. She just made sure we had groceries, a functioning Wi-Fi connection, and access to her lawyer team. More importantly, she helped me find someone for Aiden. Dr. Jonah Reese, pediatric counselor, soft-spoken, mid-40s, kind eyes that didn't condescend. The kind of man who didn't speak to children like they were puzzles or projects, but like they were people. The first session, I waited in the car, hands locked on the steering wheel, watching the minutes tick by on the dashboard. When Aiden came out, he climbed in beside me and buckled up. It was okay, he said quietly. Just okay. He shrugged. He asked good questions. Made me draw stuff. Do you want to go back? A small smile flickered. Yeah, I think so. So we went back. Twice a week. Every week. Dr. Reese helped Aiden find the words he didn't know how to shape. Helped him unpack the weight of betrayal without carrying the shame of it. I didn't push him. I didn't ask what they talked about. I let the space be his. At home, we talked more than we ever had. Not about Selena, not about blood or secrets, but about us. About the way I used to build him Lego towers before work. About his favorite baseball players. About why the stars in the city look different than the ones back at our old house. One night, while we were watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures, Aiden turned to me and said, "You're not mad at me for not telling you sooner, right?" My heart ached. "No, buddy, not even a little." He looked back at the screen, then said, "I didn't want to mess up everything. I didn't want to keep it secret. You didn't mess up anything. You helped me see the truth. That's the bravest thing you could have done." He nodded, then leaned against me. "You're still my dad. I always will be." Some nights were harder than others. I'd hear him cry sometimes, not loud, not attention-seeking, just soft, broken sobs through the wall. The kind of crying you do when you're not sure you're allowed to. I'd get up, walk to his room, and just sit on the edge of his bed. I didn't ask. I didn't speak. I just stayed. And in time, the crying faded. As the weeks passed, Selena didn't contest custody. Maybe it was shame. Maybe she knew she couldn't win. Maybe Estelle had finally understood how thoroughly I'd buried their credibility. Noelle's filings had been thorough, evidence, statements, even a private evaluator who confirmed Aiden was thriving with me and anxious around his mother's name. The court moved faster than I expected. Sole custody awarded within 60 days. Visitation at Aiden's discretion. He asked if he had to go. No, I told him. You don't. He didn't bring her up after that. Work, oddly enough, flourished. I focused harder. Pitched cleaner. My firm noticed. I got assigned a new client, offered a seat on a special advisory committee. People said I seemed sharper, more precise. Grief will do that. So will clarity. One afternoon, I stood outside Aiden's school waiting for him to finish. The sun was warm on my face. Birds chirped in the distance. The sound of children laughing floated across the lawn. When he spotted me, he smiled and waved, jogging over with his backpack bouncing behind him. "You hungry?" I asked. "Starving," he grinned. "Can we get tacos?" "Absolutely." We got in the car, and I played our usual playlist, his favorite songs sandwiched between my old-school jams. He hummed the words to both. We drove with the windows down. At the taco place, while we waited for our order, he looked up from his juice and asked, "Dad, do you think people can still be good if they lie?" I thought about it. I think people can make bad choices for selfish reasons. But it doesn't mean they're evil. It just means they're not who you hoped they were. He nodded like he understood. "Okay. You worried about turning out like her?" He shook his head. "No. I want to be like you." The lump that hit my throat stayed with me the whole drive home. Back at the guest house, Aiden did his homework at the kitchen table while I answered emails. We weren't healed, not completely. But we were mending thread by thread, laugh by laugh. I no longer needed revenge. I didn't crave an apology. I didn't even check to see if Selena had opened the files on her phone. It didn't matter. What mattered was this. My son knew I chose him, again and again. Even when the truth cracked the ground, I held his hand. Even when silence seemed easier, I gave him answers. That's what makes a father. Not blood. Choice. Every day, I made it again. They thought I wouldn't figure it out. That I'd keep smiling through gritted teeth, keep paying the bills, keep showing up at every event like the perfect prop in their carefully constructed play. They thought my silence was stupidity, my kindness weakness, and my love something they could keep stretching until it finally snapped without a sound. But they forgot one thing. My son watches me, and I raised him to listen, to notice, to ask questions even when the answers might hurt. He did. And because of him, I woke up. I think about that a lot now. How it all could have gone unnoticed if not for a child's intuition and a worn-out game phone that caught the sound of two women destroying everything I'd built. I still hear that whisper in Aiden's voice, "Don't ever go back to that house." It wasn't fear. It was awareness. It was a child who knew the truth before his father did, and still chose to trust me with it. That's what they didn't understand. The ones who laughed behind closed doors, who whispered their lies into coffee mugs and clinked glasses over the weight of their deception, they underestimated the bond one had with my son. They thought biology was the only thing that made a father. But I didn't need their approval or their labels. I didn't need their definitions. Because when the dust settled, it wasn't them who Aiden called for in the night. It wasn't Estelle or Riley or Selena who sat with him through fevers. who listened to his dreams, who showed up to every school play with a camera and tears already in his eyes. That was me. That had always been me. And now, there was no more pretending. I didn't need to raise my voice to prove it. I didn't need a fight. I just walked away and took everything that mattered with me. They lost. Not in courtrooms or social circles, but in the quiet. In the rooms where no one was watching. In the still moments where Aiden reached for my hand instead of hers. In the mornings when he asked me to pack his lunch a certain way, because I always remembered to cut the crust just how he liked. In the bedtime rituals where he chose me to read to him, even though he could read the book himself. That's where I won. In every unspoken moment of trust that couldn't be faked or manipulated. I'm not bitter, not anymore. I've moved past that stage. There was a time when I wanted everyone to know what Selena did. To drag her name through the same emotional glass she made me crawl through. To watch her sit in silence while everyone else whispered behind her back for a change. But I realized something. She doesn't deserve that much space in my mind. None of them do. What they lost was bigger than embarrassment. They lost me. And people like me, we're not replaceable. You don't just find someone who loves that deeply, who gives that generously, and then toss them away expecting the world to keep spinning in your favor. They threw away loyalty, and what they were left with was each other. People who lie to survive and smile to deceive. I drive Aiden to school every morning now. We talk about planets, superheroes, and what he wants to build when he grows up. Some days he says an inventor. Other days, a teacher. Once, he told me he wants to be a truth teller, and I just smiled and said, "You already are, buddy." After drop-off, I sit in the parking lot sometimes with a coffee in hand and watch the stream of kids walking in. I look at Aiden until the crowd swallows him up. And every day, I feel a kind of peace that I never knew I needed. Because I know he's safe. Not just physically, but emotionally. No more secrets. No more half-smiles with knives behind them. We moved into our own place last month. Nothing extravagant, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with real sunlight, a small yard where Aiden plays catch with me after homework. Noelle helped with the lease and getting us settled, but the space is ours. We filled it with books, photos, and laughter. Not the kind you force. The kind that comes when healing finally stops hiding behind grief. Selena's name barely comes up anymore. Sometimes Aiden asks small questions. Did Mom love me? Why didn't she tell you? And I answer with honesty and softness. I never poison him with my pain. That's a line I refuse to cross. Because while she may have stolen years of truth, I won't let her steal his peace too. He deserves better. And I intend to give it to him. People ask me now how I managed to stay so calm through it all. Why I didn't lose it. Why I didn't burn it all to the ground. I tell them the truth. Because I had a son watching. Because I knew he'd remember how I handled it more than what was said. Because dignity isn't loud, but it's powerful. It walks out of rooms with its head high and its silence sharp. And sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is say nothing while you take back your power. I still have the video. Still have the messages, the voice note. I don't listen to them anymore. I don't need to. The truth is already a part of me now, like scar tissue. I carry it without shame, without weight. Proof, yes, but not pain. They thought I'd stay. They thought I'd beg. They thought I'd lose my identity when the blood tie was severed. But all it did was set me free. Now I'm building again. Not just a life, but a legacy. One that Aiden will look back on and say, that's the kind of man I want to be. That's the real victory. Not a courtroom win or social vindication, but raising a boy who becomes a man who knows his worth, knows how to love with truth, and knows when to walk away from anything that asks him to shrink. I may have lost a marriage, but I kept my son. I kept my values. And I kept the part of myself that they tried to turn into a doormat. I'm the man they underestimated. And that's exactly why I won.